Kevin Alvarez asked ChatGPT a question at his desk that he immediately regretted asking, mostly because he asked it in a Slack huddle where three coworkers could see his screen. Will my job as a claims processor still exist in 2030? He was 36, living in Tampa, Florida, working for a mid-sized insurance company, making $54,000 a year processing auto claims, reading accident reports, checking damage estimates, approving or denying payouts. He'd done it for 9 years. He was good at it. He also, if he was honest, hadn't updated his resume since Obama's second term. The trigger wasn't dramatic. It was a company-wide email that landed on a random Tuesday announcing that the claims department would be piloting an AI-assisted review tool starting next quarter. No layoffs mentioned, no timeline given, just a vague, corporate kind of sentence that somehow felt scarier than if they just said what they meant. Kevin read it 3 times. Then he did the thing everyone does now when they're nervous and don't want to Google it in a panic. He asked an AI chatbot directly, half joking, half terrified, expecting either a comforting lie or nothing useful at all. The answer wasn't comforting. It also wasn't the disaster he braced for. It said that a large portion of what he did, reviewing standard claims, checking documentation, flagging inconsistencies, was highly automatable within the next few years. But it also said the parts of his job involving judgment calls on unusual or disputed claims, talking policyholders through denials, and catching fraud that didn't fit an obvious pattern were a lot harder to automate. In other words, about 60% of his actual daily tasks gone or shrinking. The other 40% probably fine, at least for a while. Kevin sat there staring at that percentage like it was a lab result. He wasn't being told he'd lose his job tomorrow. He was being told something almost worse, that his job was slowly going to become a different job and nobody was going to send him a memo explaining exactly when or how. The problem wasn't the AI tool itself. It was that Kevin had spent 9 years getting extremely good at exactly the part of the job that was about to matter least, while never touching the part that was apparently going to matter most. He had a mortgage, a 4-year-old daughter, and a wife who worked part-time at a pediatric clinic. Wait and see wasn't really a strategy he could afford, not with a percentage like that sitting in his head every time he opened a new claim file. His goal became something he never thought he'd say out loud at 36. Figure out how to make himself impossible to automate before the decision got made for him. Kevin's first move was to panic enroll in an online certificate program in data analytics because a LinkedIn ad told him data skills are the future approximately 4 times in a scrolling session. He paid $499 for a 12-week course, blocked out his evenings, and started grinding through spreadsheet exercises about an industry he didn't work in, using software his company didn't use to prepare for a job title, data analyst, that had nothing to do with claims, insurance, or anything he'd actually built 9 years of experience in. By week 4, he was exhausted, behind on the coursework, and no closer to understanding whether any of this actually protected his current job. His wife asked him one night, not unkindly, "Wait, is this to help you at your job or to get a different job entirely?" Kevin didn't have a good answer. He'd assumed learning a tech skill, any tech skill, would automatically make him safer. It didn't. It just made him tired and $499 lighter, chasing a version of future-proof he'd copied from an ad instead of thinking through for himself. He quit the course in week 5, which felt like failing until he actually sat down and figured out why it hadn't worked. The real discovery came from rereading that AI answer more carefully instead of just reacting to the scary parts of it. The tasks it flagged as hard to automate weren't random. They were specifically the parts of his job involving judgment, communication, and pattern recognition on messy, non-standard situations. That wasn't a learn-to-code problem. That was a get deliberately better at the human, judgment-heavy parts of my actual current job problem, hiding in plain sight the whole time. Kevin asked the AI a much more specific follow-up. given his exact role, which specific skills inside claims and insurance would likely become more valuable, not less, over the next 5 years. The answer named things like fraud pattern investigation, complex claim negotiation, and cross-department coordination on disputed cases, the exact stuff Kevin had always quietly avoided because it was harder and slower than just clearing routine claims all day. He laughed at that part, actually, sitting at his kitchen table. 9 years of doing the easy 60% really well, and it turned out the boring, annoying 40% he'd been avoiding was the part with a future attached to it. His first small win came fast. He asked his manager if he could shadow the 2 senior adjusters who handled the company's disputed and fraud-flagged claims, the messy cases nobody wanted. His manager, mildly surprised anyone volunteered for that pile, said yes immediately. 3 weeks in, Kevin caught a pattern in a set of claims that the standard review process had missed: inflated repair estimates from one specific body shop appearing across 4 unrelated claims. It wasn't AI that caught it, it was Kevin, paying closer attention than usual because for the first time he actually understood why that attention mattered. Word got around the office about the body shop thing, in the low-key way office wins travel. A mention in a meeting, a nice catch from a director Kevin had spoken to maybe twice in 9 years. It wasn't a promotion, it wasn't even a raise, but it was the first time in a long time someone above him had noticed something he'd done, instead of just processing another stack of claims that nobody would ever specifically remember. Kevin kept leaning into the harder cases. He got formally added to the fraud review rotation. He started sitting in on calls where adjusters explained denials to upset policyholders, learning how the senior guys de-escalated conversations that Kevin, honestly, used to be a little scared of. Then the second problem showed up, right on schedule, about 4 months in. The AI-assisted review tool the company had mentioned in that original email finally launched, and it was good, genuinely good. It cleared routine, straightforward claims faster and more consistently than Kevin ever had, catching small documentation errors he would have occasionally missed on a tired Friday afternoon. Watching it work, Kevin felt a version of the fear from the beginning of this whole story creep back in, except this time it wasn't hypothetical. It was sitting right there on his screen, doing part of his old job better than he had. His first thought was, okay, so I was wrong, it's happening exactly like I feared. But sticking around to actually watch how the tool got used told a different story. The company didn't cut headcount and claims, they shifted people. The adjusters who'd only ever done routine claims were being retrained, or in 2 cases Kevin heard about quietly, let go over the following months as the department shrank down to fewer, more specialized roles. The adjusters who handled complex, disputed, judgment-heavy cases, the pile Kevin had spent 4 months voluntarily building experience in, became more valuable, not less, because the AI tool couldn't touch that pile at all. This sent Kevin into one more round of investigation, a more personal one this time. He asked himself, not an AI, what actually made him valuable now compared to a year ago. The answer wasn't, I know how to use AI tools, even though he did. It was that he'd become one of the few people in his department who could handle the cases the AI couldn't, and who understood the AI tool well enough to sanity check its flags instead of blindly trusting or dismissing them. That was the real transformation. Kevin didn't outcompete the AI, he moved to the part of the job that sat next to it instead of underneath it, reviewing what it flagged, handling what it couldn't, and becoming the person his department needed specifically because the tool existed, not despite it. By month 6, when the department did shrink from 14 adjusters to 9, Kevin wasn't one of the 5 who left.
A year after that Slack huddle question he immediately regretted asking out loud, Kevin got promoted to Senior Claims Investigator, a role that didn't exist in his department before the AI tool did. His salary went from $54,000 to $67,000. 9 adjusters were now doing what 14 used to, and Kevin wasn't collateral damage in that math. He was one of the reasons the smaller team actually worked. He still laughs about the data analytics course, the $499 he spent trying to become a completely different professional instead of a sharper version of the one he already was. He tells people now half-jokingly that he tried to outrun AI by becoming a spreadsheet guy, and it turns out the winning move was just paying attention to the parts of his own job that were already hard to automate, sitting right there the whole time. The framework hiding inside his year is pretty simple, even if it took him a scary email and a wasted online course to find it. Ask specifically, not generally, which parts of your actual job are easy to automate versus hard to automate. The answer is almost never the whole thing or none of it. It's a messy split, and that split tells you exactly where to spend your energy. Move toward the judgment-heavy, messy human parts of your role before you're forced to, because that's where demand quietly shifts first. And when a new tool actually does land in your workplace, don't just brace for impact. Study it, learn its blind spots, and become the person who knows exactly where it needs a human checking its work. Kevin's job in 2030 probably won't look like his job in 2020. It already doesn't look like his job 2 years ago. But it still exists, and more than that, it pays him more than it used to, because he stopped asking whether AI would take his job and started asking which specific parts of it actually needed him more than ever. Maybe the reader isn't a claims adjuster in Tampa. Maybe it's a completely different title, a completely different industry, staring down a completely different version of that same email. The shock Kevin felt reading that first answer wasn't really the scary part. The scary part would have been never asking the question at all and finding out the slow way with no plan and no 4-month head start on the pile of work nobody else wanted to touch.
If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Because every week we break down exactly how everyday Americans can build genuine financial momentum from wherever they are.